less complicated. Gently pressed, softly told by hollow breaths and wicked souls, you have nothing but life to give. Your life is not your own to live. Indifferent grin and stonish eyes, you are them and they despise. Breed into you that which we hate, dramatic swings in your emotional state. When we were children, you were guarded. You were softened while we were hardened. And so now we're grown and both are weak. You from us and us from the you we seek. Now, this next bit. Last week I wrote a Facebook post that got out of hand.
Yeah.
This is when I get bored at work, I ask people what I can write jokes about. And someone told me the East Coast. And it didn't really come out jokey. I just kind of talked about my time there. And it got really depressing. So I'm going to share that with you guys now. All right. I really love the juxtaposition of East Coast versus West Coast humor. The difference is drastic and flavorful, like eating wasabi when you're expecting guacamole. I have a friend who, when he moved here, thought it was odd so few people laughed at his jokes, until someone finally asked him, why are you always so mean, though? When I lived in Pennsylvania for a very brief amount of time, and people would ask me where I was from, and I replied Oregon, I would get one of three responses. One, where is that? 2, tacky Oregon Trail joke. Or 3, an immediate dislike demonstrated with fun phrases like, I hate Oregon, people are too nice there. Because, people who are too nice are just the worst people to be around. The most hateful response I ever got went several degrees beyond the people are just too nice there. And I'm going to tell you this story, which is a true one, but before I do, please note that I'm quoting people. I am not using this slur. I am quoting somebody who used this slur, and I'm not going to censor their hate for them. I think we're all adults here. I think we can handle it. Okay, so the most fucked up response I ever received when meeting new people and telling them I was from Oregon happened in the dead of night, in a room full of marijuana smoke that was full of 6 to 8 young adult men and me. One of them was my boyfriend. As soon as I said the word Oregon, because somebody asked me where I was from, the guy who had asked me looked at me, and then he said the following statement that I will never forget. You're from Oregon? That's the state that has a trans mayor. People must be fucked up over there to let that happen. Trannies should be in prison, not in office. To which one of his friends replied, or put in the ground. And everyone nodded in agreement except for me, my boyfriend, and one of his closest friends. They then proceeded to talk about all the trans people they knew, which was one trans person that they knew, who was also a scam artist. And so because he was a scam artist, they attributed that to him being trans and not to him just being, a scummy person, which happens in all groups. They nonchalantly joked about how they'd rape her right if she wasn't so ugly. And I couldn't believe how riled up and angry they were about the topic and how upset they were about people who looked or dressed different than their gender. It was one of the most sad, uncomfortable moments of my life. I was sitting in that room and I felt totally alone, sitting there in men's shorts in a wife beater, thankful that my boyfriend was the biggest one there. And when he took me home, he asked me to start wearing makeup and dresses in public forever after that. Anyway, it didn't take long living there to come to the conclusion that I'm pretty good with being from a place that's too nice versus whatever the fuck the East Coast thinks it is. And I don't know what I was expecting, honestly. That's the same place where they rioted not because children were raped, but because the rapists and the enablers weren't allowed to coach football anymore. So anyway, I guess the conclusion of this is fuck the East Coast. Yeah, I know, I'm sorry, that's heavy. That's a story I've never told anyone before.
Wow.
And then I decided to tell it to all of you. I do have a poem. I'll close it up with a poem. This is one of my favorite nonsense poems. And I'll try not to trip over the words. It's called Babbling Tidbits. The bird that bites the bush is very hard to see, and when no one's looking, I look but they see me. And since the bird that beats the bushel never gets the credit, by breaking down this poem without ever having read it, I'll buy some other business and save speech for somewhere else, and the birds will break the barriers to bring us away from hell. For the heart that swings the pendulum quite oft is hard to steal, and time is masked in cloaks of heat, enchanting all we feel. It begs the wondering to pluck the thought, to ponder and pretend the polling of the hours will place our hearts to mend. Perhaps preference is not ours, but may have been before, placed within the perfect soul's pale chaos from us tore. Dainty little nothings that once were our delight, digging simple pleasantries before we found our sight. Don't discourage darling dears from becoming blind again. They dictate dire reminders, those drafts to now from them. Doubtful that they'll last so long, donned with doling heads. They'll do nothing all their days but love desire's threads. Being naught but plain dumb stones, left always deaf and mute, between plump daisies and sweet earth, cushioning grady roots. And